Hi, my name is Eric Kazanjian, and I'm a fourth year medical student at the Quinnipiac University Frank Netter School of Medicine. In this video series, I'll be interviewing individuals who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, as well as their caregivers on what it's like to live with this disease and how their lives have changed because of it. The purpose of these videos is to give these individuals a platform to make their voices heard, to educate the public, and to reduce stigma surrounding Alzheimer's. I've also interviewed two healthcare professionals to get their unique perspectives on the challenges of caring for those living with this disease. And lastly, I've included some resources on the channel, which I hope may be helpful if you, a family member, or a friend has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy.
I'm Geri Taylor, and I'm living with Alzheimer's for how many years?
10 years.
10 years.
Hi, I'm Jim Taylor, and I'm Geri's husband and care partner. And we've been very active since Geri was diagnosed in advocating for people living with the disease.
I have familial family, and so I knew it was happening, and I realized that I was going to have to tell Jim that was going on, and that's how the story from me started.
So Geri has many relatives with Alzheimer's. She is an RN and has a MPH, Master's of Public Health from Columbia, and ran the largest long-term care institution in New York City. So has a long history in healthcare and recognized the signs of cognitive issues. Got off the subway one day and didn't know why she was at 14th Street in New York City, and a couple of other instances where she lost her focus. But one morning she looked into the mirror and didn't recognize the person looking back at her. And she knew at that point that she needed to tell me. She'd mentioned that to me she was having some cognitive issues, but Geri's a brilliant person, and I just thought maybe she was beginning to have some age-appropriate memory issues. But this was serious, and we went to the neurologist and received the diagnosis.
Thanks so much for sharing that. When you went to the neurologist and you received the diagnosis there, do you guys feel like you were given any resources that were pointing you in the right direction about like support groups or anything like that?
Absolutely none. And this was 10 years ago, Eric, so hopefully some of this has been changing. I think in some hospitals or in some institutions it has, but unfortunately in many others it has not. So we left with often what's referred to diagnose and adios. We'll see you a year from now, and we're given a prescription to Aricept, which is a medication that somewhat mitigates for some individuals the symptoms of the disease. And we're given no information about the disease, no referrals where online we can educate ourselves, no referral to the Alzheimer's Association or other support groups, and unfortunately no recommendation to participate in clinical trials, all of which now we think are essential for a diagnosing physician to do with a case of dementia.
I'm really sorry to hear that. Just from some of my experiences, talking to other individuals who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it's kind of sounds like a similar story that, when they received that diagnosis, they weren't really given any resources and, didn't know where to turn and had to figure everything out on their own.
Right.
So now you've been dealing with this for a while now. Are there any resources in particular, like you mentioned, the Alzheimer's Association, that you would recommend to people?
The Alzheimer's Association is the most widely available support group located across the country. We've also worked with an organization, Us Against Alzheimer's, but their mission is not really patient support or support of people living with the disease. So I think the Alzheimer's Association is a good one. There's great information online. Alzheimer's Association has a wealth of information, but it's quite overwhelming at first, I think. There are good books available. And actually, Eric, we're starting a pilot program in New York City that Geri and I have founded along with a partner on the West Coast to train former care partners for 12 months after a new individual is diagnosed to support this individual and their care partner, and to bring them information about their disease, emotional support, and hopefully give them personal help in finding a clinical trial. So if this concept is successful, it's one that we would like to duplicate across the country in major metropolitan areas. But we very fortunately, Geri had done research previously and knew immediately when she was diagnosed that she wanted to participate in a double-blind interventional trial. And I said, what? I didn't even know what those words meant, Eric. So it was a real education for me. And we used, there is a tool online called Trial Match, which is the Alzheimer's Association online search tool for individuals who are looking for a clinical trial. And there are other tools like this online, but it works on the same principle. The principle is you put in your zip code, answer a couple of questions, and then it tells you all the clinical trials that are in a 25-mile radius, say, of your zip code. The problem is if you're new to if you're a layperson, or if you're new to the disease, you have no idea what those described trials are. You don't know what amyloid is. You don't know what tau is. You don't know what interventional means. So it's not a helpful tool. I've been trying to get another tool as a companion for this, so that you enter your zip code. What comes back is clinical trial sites where you can go, make an appointment, and be evaluated and have a trial recommended to you. But we don't have that yet. But so we didn't find a trial through Trial Match, but we did through other means a year or two later find a trial. We lived in New York City at the time, and the trial was at Yale in New Haven, which means we needed to drive a couple of hours each way, but we did because it was to us, a very exciting trial. It was a trial for a drug now called aducanumab, and this was for the phase 1. And there are 3 phases of trials as they progress before they're approved by the FDA. And this was the initial human trial, and with about 180 people in this small trial. And Geri's been on the drug now for 7 years, and the drug was just approved last June as the first disease-modifying therapy for Alzheimer's.
The medication, one gives you hope, but also I feel that it's not everything, but I have felt that it did help me. And when I didn't, they pulled it, and I was without for a period of time. And for me, that was a loss. And I felt that I wasn't doing as well. I'm back on now. And, of course, you can't measure in the same way with those changes.
We believe that the drug definitely helped, Geri. We know it doesn't help everybody, and it's a very controversial drug, and the decision to approve it was very controversial, as I'm sure you know. But we felt for her it was very effective. Geri received a bad gene from both parents. There's a genetic inclination toward Alzheimer's, and about half the people with Alzheimer's have a genetic one of these bad genes. Geri has 2 bad genes. Only 2% of the population have both genes, but she was therefore 12 times more likely than average to develop Alzheimer's. I add that because it is in those genetic cases that have been found to benefit most from this drug. So we think that she has definitely benefited from the drug she declined very, very slowly in the early stages. Just not unusual, but we were traveling across the country and to Europe to speak about living with Alzheimer's, and she managed that extremely well. She spoke, we would speak 50-50 in our presentations. But then Biogen, who's the manufacturer, developer of the drug, thought it had failed in the large phase 3 and they stopped it. So Geri no longer was able to receive her infusions. It's a monthly infusion. And we noticed after 3 or 4 months that her communication problems began and her short-term memory began to decline more rapidly. So we felt the year that she was off the drug was really step backwards, that we were losing ground. So the drug is not meant to stop decline. At best, it will slow the rate of cognitive decline, but we really feel that we have benefited by the opportunity to be on that drug and are very grateful to have that opportunity. But it's really critical, and I believe it's a crisis that more people don't participate in clinical trials. Less than 1% of people living with Alzheimer's participate in clinical trials. And we really need to double or triple that rate if we're going to find a cure. And people don't understand, there's a lot of misinformation, Eric, out there about clinical trials, especially for people with a familial reason, inclination to develop the disease. Their children and grandchildren are also possibly carrying that gene that will increase the likelihood. So for them to participate in a clinical trial is, I feel, more important. And not only are you really trying to find a cure for humanity, but you're trying to find a cure for your children and your grandchildren. One positive choice you can make is to participate in a clinical trial. And you feel like, I used to laugh when I would drive Geri home from Yale, where she'd gotten her infusions. I felt like Madame Curie was in the car. Like she felt she was part of the research team, that she was right there looking in the microscope and doing everything she could to help find a cure for her son and for her granddaughter and for everyone. But it's really a very positive event. And not everyone's going to, of course, be on a successful trial, but we have to go down every one of these avenues.
Yeah, wow, that was quite a lot of information. Great answers. Geri, how do you feel like having Alzheimer's disease has affected you in your daily life?
Well, my capabilities are impacted. For example, I have to be very careful in the kitchen. I have to turn around a few times to find things that I'm looking. I mean, this is the day-to-day. So I still do the dinner, not a fancy one. And, I keep things in the house well, with some help. Now I got off on how we were in the house. So what were we talking?
I was 80 if I could go off.
I'm very fortunate. I have a wonderful husband and wonderful people around me and a lot of support, and working towards a betterment for people with Alzheimer's. I see people and a lot of support in that, which is very, very important.
It's a great question, Eric. We have a friend who responds to that question, in what way hasn't Alzheimer's impacted their life? But Geri's lived with it for 10 years, which is quite a long time to still be as much trouble as she continues to be every day. So she manages extremely well. She has developed a philosophy of trying to find living strategies so that she's always looking, having been a nurse and having had stroke patients, she's always looking for adaptations, strategies to compensate for her continual declining cognition. And over the 10 years, of course, it's impacted her life increasingly. At first, she was just forgetful. Then she had to give up driving as she realized there was some cognitive slowness in her responses. And of course, that's a big impact on your life. Geri's an amateur photographer of note. And so it meant she couldn't go out and drive around the countryside and take pictures as she loved to do. And a dependency on me. And of course, realistically, there is an increasing dependence on the care partners, then put things back. So then I have to search for everything. So, it's just one of the things you become accustomed to. And, care partners, if they don't develop more patience, it's a rough road. So people ask me, number one, what for care partners, what do you do? The first thing you do is work on your patience, because it's going to make your life a lot easier and the person you're caring for is a lot easier. But Geri's a very wise person, and she has learned and educated herself with this disease. And one of the things she told me that I will never forget, she said, a friend of mine had commented that their neighbor had dementia, and he would see this neighbor, and it was such a shame. And I shared this with Geri, and Geri said, Jim, what your friend doesn't understand is that the dementia person that Sal knows is perfectly okay. Sal doesn't understand that his friend is okay. He sees a person who is different from himself. I know that even though you and I are no longer the same in capability, I am perfectly okay. I'm just different than you are. And healthy people often don't realize that when they see someone who they consider disabled or with dementia, they're in a different state, and we think that that state is lesser or not okay. And she said, we should not assume that, because I am perfectly okay with who I am today and at each state I am going to.
To that point, if I could add something in, they are the funniest, fun people to be with if you let it be that way.
Most people aren't aware of their own bias and discomfort around people with dementia, and I think it's a very natural thing that we need to examine ourselves for and watch ourselves for.
But what would you like others to know about you as a person?
I'm happy. I have a wonderful life. I have people around me and supportive. And I think that that's very much because despite I'm not the same person in terms of my abilities, I am able to take those to the personhood that I have now. And in doing that, I think people are made more comfortable understanding who we are and people. And I could go on, but I lost that part of the drift. But yeah, I think friends are so important. And my experience, and I remember one of the wonderful friends that I have, and I thought she was going to fall on the floor when, I got to the point that it was comfortable enough to let my girls group know. And I thought, sure, she wouldn't come back. Well, that's told me she was coming.
Great friend.
Yeah, she's a great friend. After she had her own rock, she's older than me, a lot older. And I think she was really afraid she was going to be suddenly, have Alzheimer's. But it took her a couple of days, and she came right around, and she's wonderful. She's helped us and looking up things.
You know, it's interesting. But I think a lot of people don't know that they're concerned. They don't know how to interact with people who have dementia. Our experience is that we shared very early, and we shared widely. And we've tried to bring our friends and family along with us in this journey. So they found out when Geri was not significantly impaired. And they've walked with us, and they continued with us. We have lost nobody. And I think if people are told when you're mild or moderate and you're beginning to show signs, they're, well, you know, why didn't you tell me before?
You know, everybody wants it always to be my way, the way it was, and it isn't. And it requires some work, and the work and the understanding of yourself and your partner. The end of that, the goodness coming out of that, is so much worth it. But I find a lot of people don't want to change. And this is about change. You know, I'm not able in so many ways that I don't have any now. Being down about not being the person you were, because that person isn't there anymore. It's not capable in a lot of things, but it can swivel it, whatever, into a place that you can live with very well.
Geri likes to talk about the advantages of having Alzheimer's when we make our presentations to folks. And by the way, we're always available if anybody who's watching this wants us to come and speak to, we're happy to do that. So when I'm talking to Eric, I am fully listening in with Eric, because I don't have any overhanging thoughts because they're gone. And I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say next because I probably won't make another comment. So she said, you know, it's a real opportunity to be present. And I'm very present. And that my relationships have become even more valuable to me than they were before, by being able to be closer to to be better able to hear and be in the moment. We've had so many wonderful experiences. We've met so many wonderful people. So I try to encourage care partners, caregivers to realize that they've been given an opportunity for growth that many people are never given, that they will have better insights, they will know more about relationships, and they have an opportunity to bond with someone they're caring for that many people rarely have. And you've got the job whether you are going to take advantage of it or not. So why not take advantage of it and grow as a person when you're going through that experience? Sure, it's going to be tough at the end. Nobody denies that, but make the best of it during the early and middle years. Enjoy those years and grow. I think it's be flexible, be willing to change, and increase your patience.
Jumping back, we talked about this a little bit as well. How would you like to be treated by others?
I would like to be treated the way I've always been. And if I need help, my speech has gone south. And I hold back now. One of the things I've learned is I don't really have to put that many words out there, or that idea, or because I feel from people it's so much more to be just with them, and they're being heard, or understanding. And that's, you know, that's so much part of the essence of what we do live with others. Is that what Because I was thinking, thank you.
I don't think Geri has spoken this well in an interview in some months. So I think that's a tribute to you and your patience and this opportunity.
You gave me time, and the world doesn't do that. They want to go fast. And if they do put the time in, people like yourself are working with people like me, and they have the the ability that the person you're talking with will put that time in, that will see the importance or just the time, can do what you saw today, because I really have not been speaking with, except Jim and I don't count, we talk all the time. But other people, it hasn't, and the best of people, family and friends, but still, the world is not ready to, get the Alzheimer's way of speaking. They want to go fast.
It's a very hard diagnosis to receive. I'm sure you know that. Geri can have heard that before. I think the very important thing is to give yourself time to adjust. Personally, I went through several weeks of grieving. After the diagnosis, I really withdrew. I was depressed, withdrawn. Geri was expecting the diagnosis, but I was blindsided. But then, realize that dementia is a continuum. And usually when you're diagnosed, unless it's diagnosed later, you just dealing with a person who's forgetful, and that there are many years yet to have a wonderful, full, passionate life, and make the most of those years. Pull out your bucket list, find a passion, volunteer, put as much joy in your life as you can find, and make that primary. Cherish your relationships, because hard days are coming, but you've been given a gift in one way, in that now with greater emphasis that every day needs to be lived fully. And this can be a wonderful thing in life. Geri likes to say that we're really not that different, except that she knows what her diagnosis is. I don't know what mine is going to be eventually, but and live it fully and compassionately. Look for the sunny side of the street. This has been a real pleasure for us.
It has been, and I really appreciate it, because I don't have the time from most people to talk about the really important and real things. So I'll eat on this for several days. Thank you very much.